Welcome to the first of our two senior capstone presentations for the year. Typically we have studio artists, graphic designers, and occasionally a media arts major who will exhibit in this kind of fashion. Today we have a mixture of people. I'll introduce everyone by name and tell you what their major is. We have Shawn Bjerke, who's a studio art major. We have Haselerhansen, who is a graphic design major. We have McMackin, who is also a graphic design major. And Trevor Lomen, who is miscellaneous. Is it safe to say liberal arts? Is that still what they call it?
Maybe.
Because I know they changed the name recently. Trevor Lomen, everybody. There's some seats over here still. 2 or 3 left for people.
Front row, too.
Front row. We got 4 in the front right here for people who are not shy or Lutheran.
Of course. Oh, hey.
So what you're about to see and hear about is the end result of almost 8 months of effort and work it ebbs and flows, I suppose. Since last September, we started working on these things. And so I'm not going to tell you anything more about them. I'm going to let the people describe them for you. So our first presenter tonight is Trevor Lomen.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. There's so many of you. Oh dear. So as Andy said, I'm a liberal arts major, and I will get into that later in the slide. But as you can see, I kind of call myself what is a world builder, and that also I will get into. So my art is over there. So right over there, I'll use the pointer, like those 4 concept arts, and then that costume right there. So what is the purpose of the displayed work? It was kind of to challenge myself in an enjoyable manner, to tell a story that's been a lifetime in the making, and to practice for becoming a video game designer. So first off, with what makes an enjoyable challenge? Well, coming here to Bethany Lutheran College, I kind of moved around from different majors starting out with. I was first a theater major. I came here to be an actor, to do voice acting, because I loved entertainment. I loved being able to entertain people, to be on the stage and use different voices, to just have a really good time out there. And then I got into costuming, which was a blast. I've had so much fun. I was working in Sleepy Hollow in 2018, and then just this last fall, I was working on costumes for Snow Queen. Both of those were just a blast. But I moved from being an actor to being an English major, and then that still didn't fit. So I did a little bit of talking, a little bit of soul searching, and ended up in the liberal arts major. Now, for you guys who don't know what liberal arts is, it's kind of what I would call a grab bag of different classes across all different lines of knowledge. So I took a lot of classes in art, so like painting, sculpture, 3D design, digital illustration, which those are over there. I did costume design, costume construction. But moving away from the arts, I also did psychology, history, like all sorts of wonderful types of knowledge, and it was all enjoyable to learn. You learn so much about humanity by just looking at what all people enjoy to do. It's fun to be able to just learn about it, but also to talk to people who are in those majors, as well as the people who teach about that subject, because you never know what you're going to hear from them. And then Moving on. So what's the story? So when I was a child, while I was growing up, you had things coming out like movies on VHS, for any of you guys who remember what VHS is. Next we had like also video games coming out in like little cartridges, and then it moved on to like DVDs. And so both of those types of media were very present in my life. Action movies, romantic comedies, mysteries, video games like platformers like Zelda. No, that's not right. But video games and movies were kind of all around me growing up. And so I really liked those types of medium for storytelling. Going to being a young adult, when I first went to college, this is my second time through. When I first went to college, it was as a electronics automated technology associate at a 2-year college. But all that time, I was still enjoying the idea of, well, what if I could create games? What if I could move on from just like paper and pencil kind of things and went to the actual digital type? So still keeping that in mind, bringing that to now, all throughout that time, I was coming up with these stories of like these really strange creatures on this like world. They adapted throughout their lifetimes to where you might have things hot in one moment and then cold in another, and somehow they're still kind of thriving without having to do too much when it came to costumes. When it came to like costumes, like what they wore. It wasn't really about that. It was about like them changing naturally or using machinery based on like how long they've been in an area. And so when I was in digital illustration this semester, I decided, it was like, okay, let's bring that further along and see what I would come up with, thinking if I actually turn this into a video game. So we had like, over there's a like a whale the size of a planet, and on his back is like a giant mountain, and on his belly is like an ocean. It's a crazy idea. It's like, who's ever thought of like a creature being the overall world? It's really kind of a fun, really interesting topic. Then you have everybody else, the creatures kind of just living on there, and it's like, okay, what does this look like? What kind of things are they coming up with? How do they live? And so just as kind of a fun practice to use my experience as a costume designer and constructor, I created the costume. And that was a labor of love that started last semester and all the way to now, actually making it a realized thing. It's kind of crazy to see it staring at me. Also creepy. So, as I said, video games. So what the main area for video games I want to go into is, I can't point on the screen, is a game designer. Now, anytime that I've talked to people about being a game designer, they're like, well, are you doing the coding? Is that kind of what you're doing? It's like, well, I can see how you don't understand that, but that's not really the case. They do that a little bit. They do as much as they need to in order to kind of use the tools. But a game designer is about experience, designing the experience for what the audience is actually going to be looking at and what they're going to be playing. And so you're kind of like a curator of a personal museum, to where you are actually setting up what a person who is playing the game is going to see from moment to moment to moment, and also giving them the ability to go through and kind of experience it themselves at their own pace and in their own timing. And sometimes, if it's a large enough game, they get to have their own adventures and tell their own stories and go around to their friends and be like, hey, did you see this? No, I saw this completely different thing. And so you can kind of take what's in a static medium and use it to give all these people these wonderful stories to tell and kind of share with each other, but also to learn these really like out of these world stories that you can also hear from a book or a movie, just in a different format. And at the end of the day, I have a desire to be in that medium, to kind of be a Christian who's giving a product to the audience that goes in line with what Christians value. So like that servant leadership, caring about your neighbor, like being careful about what kind of product you show. Like you see a lot of profanity being brought out there, a lot of crude things that probably shouldn't be there. And so it's like, see a lot of the bad, there's good out there. And if I was able to be out there, I'd like to be able to do my best and hopefully give another example of what it means to serve the audience that you're working with, to tell stories that are valuable to each other because they have something to say about the entirety of humanity, what we have to deal with, what we struggle through, the enjoyable experiences as well. All areas, sad, happy, terrible, exuberant, and just kind of adventure with the audience as well. And part of that is just being a part of a team. I don't want to do this by myself. I want to be able to find like-minded individuals that can be like, hey, I really like what you're doing. Let's work together and make something just out of this world fantastic. And so hopefully once I'm done here, get a little bit more experience, meet some more people who share my same kind of outlook. That would be fantastic. And so that's kind of been my journey for these past many years. So yeah, thank you all. Now I'll send it over to Lauren.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Excuse me for a moment. Oh, and I'm back. Can everybody hear me okay? Can you hear me now? Yes. Awesome. I need to talk really loud then. So, hey y'all, my name is Lauren McMackin, and my capstone, co-created with my best friend Karen King, is Makeshift Idyllic. All these ice-dyed sweatshirts over here and the prints on the wall. But before there was Makeshift Idyllic, there was Schmaltz Rebranded, and that's what I walked into this capstone process with. And Schmaltz Rebranded, there was even something before that, and that was just taking photos with Karen King. We started back in high school, and these are photos that we took in high school. And we continued taking these photos all the way through college, and I'd say they improved a little bit. And with these photos, we were like, what else could we do? Because we were already making something that was turning out cool. And it was like, yeah. And so we started Schmaltz Rebranded, and this has been in the process or in the works since 2019. And these are the starting logos that I walked into Capstone with this semester. And this was the first iteration of it, and then the one on the right is the one that we were going with. Moving on, we also did, with Schmaltz Rebranded, we had sweatshirt designs and pin designs. This is one of the pin designs that we did. It was a neon cassette, but we had to do something. Schmaltz Rebranded was cool, but it could be cooler. And so we did a rebrand to start off the semester, and we came up with Makeshift Idyllic. Idyllic is maybe a word that not everybody is familiar with, and it is basically extremely happy, peaceful, or picturesque. So Makeshift Idyllic as a whole is just you're making the best out of every situation that you can. And you're trying to create things that are just nice and pretty and make you feel good about the environment that you're in. All of the designs are, ooh, I'm a little shaky. All of the designs are based off of poems that Karen and I wrote, and you can actually find those on the Makeshift Idyllic website. It's just makeshiftidyllic.com. Very easy to find if you want to take a look. But and there's the website too. So all the prints are on there, and all the poems are on there as well. But along with all the poems, we really wanted to focus on stuff like storytelling. And so we looked to music genres such as like grunge, metal, hard rock, new metal, anything that tells a really good story with raw and real emotion. And that raw and real emotion is what we're going after, because that's really as real as you can get. And the images they have a big influence of Roy Lichtenstein, because I love his work, especially his comic series. And with the photos that Karen and I were taking, this kind of like comic-esque style, not drawing too much into the comics, but this kind of style, and the portrait photography led to the portraits that you see up on the wall over there. And then with the typography that goes with Makeshift Idyllic, since we went with an ice dye style, it's kind of like a node to what made tie-dye like first really big. And that was, the 1960s, 1970s, it's a little nod. That's where that started. The colors of each piece are also really important because they're very visible on the sweatshirts. And so with Ravished Roses Revived, it is red and black, red for the roses, and then black kind of just like, it's normally seen as like an end color. And so it's the black going up into the red, kind of showing the revived. And for The Sky Tells Its Secrets, it is purple and blue. Purple to represent the night sky, and blue kind of just like a nice calming color. For I Can't Help Remembering What People Forget, the pink and green. The green is for a nice grounded approach, and the pink is for a kind of nice sunsetty color, kind of like Head in the Clouds, stuff like that. For Free Flowing and True, it is basically a reverse lava lamp. And so the lava lamp that we used for the reference photo was white, and then we just kind of took the colors and brought them out on the outside. So it's a nice little reverse. And for The Moon and the Sun Disobey the Previous Notions, we have the sun color, which would be yellow, and then kind of like this navy color for night, and then the sun and the moon are reversed for disobeying the previous notions. And then to go along with all of these designs, a kind of black and white branding style was the approach. Because we have so many colors visible, it's just kind of nice to be able to see the white and the black for the overall branding, because you'll always be able to see it. But I'm not just a graphic design major, I'm also a media arts major. So I did some animations for you guys. And these animations are 2 Cinema 4D designs and then a series of rotoscopes. The first Cinema 4D animation is basically it's a lava lamp, which was a struggle to make at first, but it's working, and it's working pretty nice. And the second one is a murmuration of birds, because the poem for I Can't Help Remembering What People Forget utilizes a murmuration of birds. And so I'm gonna play those real quick. go. All right, and here is Dot.
Hi guys, I'm Dot. So I wasn't entirely sure where to start off for this whole speech, but I think the most helpful thing would be explaining my background a little bit. Okay, would be explaining my background a little bit. So my whole life, my dad has been in the, where did it go? My whole life, my dad has been in the Navy. Currently, he is in his 28th year of service. Because of this, thank you. Because of this, the military lifestyle has been what I grew up with. It has given me so many wonderful opportunities. Sorry. It's how I got my very first job. It's how I discovered my love for different things. And it's how I discovered my passion. My first job was when I was 16 years old at the Kings Bay Naval Base in Georgia. I had the wonderful opportunity to work with the marketing team for MWR, this is MWR. By the way, this is not endorsed anyway or sponsored anyway by MWR. It just so happens to be the first company that I worked for. So it all started when I was sitting behind my late boss's desk, Chris, and watching him move around these white points on the MWR logo. I'm not entirely sure what he was doing at that time, but I thought it was the coolest thing. I thought it was so cool that he could change the direction and the overall feel of this entire logo. For the most part, I didn't really get to do the technical things with it. I was mainly just fetching things that they needed. I was their errand girl. But I still thought this was really cool, and I was convinced I wanted to do something in this field. This now leads me to my Capstone Project. Originally, I was nervous to do something relating to the military lifestyle. Sorry. And it's not something that I typically get in depth with, and I don't talk about. So it's a topic that I casually graze over. I was honestly going to do something completely different, and it was going to be this type of digital print relating to this comic of a frog that I had made up when I was 8 years old. Its name was Super Frog. He was this frog that fought crime in the middle of the night, and he had this alter ego that made him super. And I was convinced that's what I wanted to do. That is obviously not the case. So over the summer before my senior year, I was on Pinterest and I was pinning things like crazy, and I was just trying to get some type of inspiration for this. I was torn between different concepts. On one hand, I wanted to play it safe and go with something that was cute and pretty and didn't really mean that much to me, like personally. But then on the other hand, I wanted to create something that had a very deep personal connection towards me. So within this first week or two of my capstone class, I was challenged to make a list of things that I would be remotely interested in, and I would perhaps take on a different direction. One of the things that still sparked my interest was this graphic novel of Super Frog. But other things did spark my interest. It was creating these portraits related to having no hometown. And then another thing that I also was interested in was the mental health aspect of it. This was far more in depth and concentrated than a fun little drawing that I had originally planned and wanted to do. But I basically wanted to tell a story of the military lifestyle from someone who had lived it, and not the way that you typically find it by like a service member, but rather by a dependent, which is what I am because my dad is in the military. So I was going to create something where it could create a bridge of understanding of what it was like for me and others to someone that may not typically know. Thus came the creation of Blooming Everywhere, which is featured on this wall over here. One of the main inspirations was the dandelion. This plant is a symbol for military kids. As Ray Shubalik put it, when a dandelion is plucked and a wish is made, as seeds are tenderly blown, the seeds float on the wind, finding a new home. There the seeds find a new home and flourish, living side by side with their new neighbors. My first step, after of course coming up with this concept, was to figure out what I actually was going to write about. I knew what I wanted to do, I just didn't know how I was going to execute it. So I turned to the place where I could find the answers for everything, Reddit. I found a community of military brats where I reached out and asked for help. I created a Google form with 9 questions that would help me guide my content that I wanted to create. The questions were as follows. So what were 5 words to describe your life growing up as a military brat? How would you say growing up as a military child impacted your outlook on life? And what branch were you under? How often did you move? And what emotions did you feel in regards from moving place to place? What are some of your favorite things about living in the military lifestyle? And what are some of your least favorite things? And what is the biggest impact that being a military child has on you when reflecting back in life? And lastly, if they wanted to share any experiences they had growing up in the military lifestyle. I wouldn't have been as interested in it if I did not receive the responses. It gave me a push to create this booklet. On top of creating something that was much more personal to me than other projects, I also embarked on a different approach stylistically. My main medium used for these illustrations was on Photoshop. Because this project was so already unique to me, I wanted to up the ante and do something other than a typical vector illustration, which I was more comfortable with. For the most part, I had a specific plan that I had set out regarding the types of illustrations I wanted to include on this booklet, one of them being my own story. There were elements that I knew that I wanted to include because these were the defining things throughout my childhood. When creating this image, this one here, it was like I was digitally scrapbooking myself. And I have these elements of objects that have always held a special place in my life. Things like the plane and the moving truck are objects that played an impactful part in my life. I think I was maybe a baby when I first rode on an airplane. The waves and the palm trees are elements of nature that I will never tire of seeing, thanks to the places where I was fortunate enough to live. This orange moving sticker is a sticker on how they identify the different families and the different boxes in the different moving batches and making sure they go to the appropriate places. And the last element that I would like to say something about is this drawing of myself. This is more of a nod to the fact that I was always encouraged to pursue my artistic interests. This drawing makes me feel like some type of social media influencer, but that's how I felt with my biggest fans, which are my parents. They were always so supportive towards my passion for art, and when I discovered that graphic design was the thing that pushed me, or was the thing that I actually wanted to do, they pushed me towards it, and they were all in for it. Another piece that I featured in my booklet that I would like to talk about is I Can Handle It. This piece represents the fact that you strain to hold on to things. There's this constant battle of holding on while things around you are melting apart. The vibrant red is first introduced in this booklet with this piece. It is representative of the physical exhaustion present in the act of holding on to something, whether that be mentally or physically. Along with this color, the photograph of the arm contrasts the shade of the red, furthering the concept of an internal battle. You don't want to let on that these struggles are present, and you want to let people know that you can handle it. So overall, I discovered through this process that I gained a better understanding of myself, as well as the mediums that I took on. This project allowed me to step out of my comfort zone artistically and personally, as I don't typically share this part of myself. I have found that art is one of the best ways to communicate with others. At least for me it is. This booklet serves as a bridge of understanding between military brats and our neighbors. Much like a dandelion, the individuals that helped me create this booklet shared how they immersed themselves in the various places that they lived. I'm proud to finally see something in a physical aspect that I have created. And I wouldn't have been able to do this without the encouragement of my family and friends. And I want to thank my wonderful advisor, Amanda Quist, for being so patient with me and so understanding. I wouldn't have been able to do this without you. And I have more, but I don't think I can read it all. So without further ado, Shawn.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Shawn Bjerke. I'm a studio art major focusing on a 3D emphasis. And I have a question for all of you, a request maybe. If you can, look at the rock that's over here. It's a large stone. If you can't see it, I have an image from earlier this week, taken Monday, when it got rolled into the gallery unexpectedly. But just take some time and see what you can find on the stone. Look for different types of marks, different areas that have received different treatments, and try to imagine how those things got there. If you will, continue to look. I will give you all of the time that you need. Okay, what did you see? Anything? Bill, you kind of got a bad spot. It's hard to see over there.
I'm just imagining it.
Oh, okay, yeah, right. For anyone who couldn't see well, I would recommend going and looking at it and maybe considering some of these questions after the presentation. So how did this come to be? It starts with a concept, and the concept for this isn't my own. It comes from a much earlier sculptor, and the idea was brought up that maybe these stones around campus, if you've been around the campus, there are many stones that used to be like that one is, or the other way around. There's a lot of landscaping stones made out of this Kasota limestone around campus. And what if they could be something more than just a rock that sits there, and sometimes people sit on it, or it just takes up space. Along with the concept comes preliminary drawings, and you can kind of see here on the TV that the stone is much bigger than the sculpture that it is becoming, and that requires quite a bit of removal. And the methods for removal are loud and noisy and dusty, and I've been granted such a blessing that I can work outside and make all of this dust and noise, and the campus puts up with it. We continue through. There's an image, and now there's physical paint that takes the place of that image on the stone. And it starts to feel more real when you have these physical changes that happen. And we'll see it continue to change. Now it's up. Somehow this stone that weighed over a ton was lifted up and put on wooden stilts so that it could be worked on. And then more things start to happen. Stone starts to get removed, the rock starts to get smaller, it starts to become shaped more like a lion. You see edges start to emerge. There are holes where drilling happens, and these kind of elevations that look like steps where an angle grinder cuts to make the stone weak so that it can be removed more easily with a chisel and hammer. And then you start to lose the thing that was holding you on, that drawing, that thing is there and now it's gone. And you can see some of the tools that are around. And slowly, there becomes less stone until snow happens. And then it's too cold to work, there's snow everywhere, and the project gets put on hold. But in the meantime, other work keeps happening. More projects take place. There's a few other things in this show unrelated to the stonework. And those things just have to happen because this can't continue to move forward. And then you come back to that phase where you can start working again and making more progress. And I think something that I've learned through this whole process is the relationship that you build with the material you're working. It's hard to explain to someone how to do something until they start to do it with their hands when it comes to sculpting and working with materials. The stone is there, and you need to force it to move away. And sometimes food analogies help, because everyone understands food. If you tell someone that something is like sour cream, they know what you mean. But you don't really know it until you do it. And you learn more things about the way you can interact with the material and the way that it moves. And then we come to this conclusion. What happens now? Progress has been made, but it's not finished. It's still a work in progress, and this is supposed to be the end of it all. And to that I say, some things are just bigger than school. There's so many things that you can't do within a single semester, within a year, within the months that we've been given to complete these projects. I have intentions to continue working on this and finish it, but I can't know what's going to happen tomorrow or the following months. But I can keep in mind a constant life of service that wants to finish this project because it would benefit other people who get to look at it later, and maybe that would enrich their life and their experience. And I think that is one of my biggest takeaways from all of this, is that I should be living a life of service and serve people with the gifts that God's given me. And that no matter what happens, it's not a failure if someone has been served through the process. And I think that's all that I want to say.
Please feel free to ask more questions to the individuals who are here. We have food and beverages waiting for you.
And books.
And books. The library has arrived. So please hang around and rub elbows with sophisticated people.